asked him where he was going. He said, "Away from what's coming." He never told me what that was. I think he hoped I'd never find out.
Welcome, Initiate. Leman Russ had a vision. He gathered his Varagir, sailed into the Eye of Terror, and promised to return for the Wolf Time, the final battle at the end of all things. That is a noble quest, a son that is going to save his own father. But there is a catch. Walking into the fortress of your enemy to find a cure? Vanishing for 10,000 years on a mission of hope? Seems like Leman didn't want to come back. So what did Leman Russ actually find? And why did finding it mean he could never return? To understand this, let's start with the Sanctioned story. The Horus Heresy was a costly victory for the Imperium. It feels like a funeral because it is. The Emperor is a psychic corpse plugged into a golden throne, his fading light the only thing holding the galaxy together. The Primarchs are gone, either dead, scattered, or damned, but Leman is still here. The Executioner is standing in the wreckage of everything they built, perhaps a little broken, and during one of the feasts, something happens. A vision hits him in the middle of the celebration. Some would say it wasn't a vision itself, but a determination, or a plan that formed in Leman's mind. Either way, he stands up, calls the Varagir, his personal space wolves, and makes a plan. He puts Bjorn the Fell-Handed in command, granting him the rank of the first Great Wolf, the equivalent of chapter master as other legions, although it is a rank Bjorn didn't hold until the 7th year of Leman's disappearance. He then tells Bjorn that he is going out, but he will return for the final battle, for the Wolf Time, and sails straight into the Eye of Terror. I'm sorry, but what the f? Apologies, Initiate. Let's continue. Why is he sailing to the Eye of Terror, you might ask? Because there is a legend that grows around it. A tree of life. A mythological power source capable of healing anything, even a dying god. The Space Wolves have launched great hunt after great hunt. Operations to search for Leman Russ, even founding his armor once, but that's it. The Skalds called this a noble sacrifice, the undying loyalty of a son chasing a miracle for his father. It is a good story, but in the grim darkness of the far future, the stories that comfort everyone are usually the ones hiding something unbearable. But there are cracks in the saga, starting with its destination. The Eye of Terror is not a place of healing. It's the living wound where chaos was born, where demons breed and corruption festers, where every horror this galaxy has suffered came from. Russ knew the warp better than most, fighting its servants his entire life. The idea that he aimed his fleet there to find a mythological healing tree doesn't make sense. And I know what some of you are thinking. There are other stories, Xeno stories about something in the warp that even decay can't destroy. Isha, the Eldar goddess of healing, is a prisoner of Nurgle. So Leman could go to Nurgle's garden, rescue her even though she is a Xeno, and she could heal the Emperor, right? That sounds plausible, but there's a problem. The only reason we know for sure Leman went to the Eye of Terror is for this mythical tree of life. He didn't know about Isha being a prisoner in the warp. Even some Eldars don't know about this. The only thing that could happen is that in his journey to find this tree, he finds Isha, but that is another theory itself. And this is the part that should bother you. The quest for a cure exists only as a Space Wolves legend, not as Imperial record. There are no orders, no final command from the Emperor, and Bjorn the Fell-Handed has carried this story for millennia and has never once explained what Leman Russ actually saw in that vision. Leman was the Emperor's executioner, an efficient killer, and all the good qualities a Primarch could have. So why vanish for 10,000 years with 0 results and 0 contact? It seems completely out of character for a man like that. When the destination makes no tactical sense, when the behavior breaks pattern, and when the mission leaves no evidence, you're not looking at a failed quest. You're looking at something that was never meant to be understood. So what was this vision that Leman had? He didn't think of a cure. He thought of a consequence. There is a prophecy that speaks of a 5th chaos god, not born from rage, pleasure, disease, or scheming, born from something far more familiar: faith. The absolute devotion of trillions of human souls fixed on a single dying point of psychic light. This entity is called the Dark King, a god of tyranny, cold, perfect, and merciless order. Something that would make the current Imperium look like a paradise of freedom. During his final battle with Horus, the Emperor came terrifyingly close to this transformation. He drew so deeply from the warp that for a moment, he was no longer entirely human, but he pulled back from the edge at the very last moment. But that potential didn't disappear, it waits. For 10,000 years, the Emperor has sat on the Golden Throne, sustained by 1,000 psyker deaths every day, worshipped by an empire of trillions who call him a god, drowning in exactly the kind of psychic mass belief that births chaos gods. What if Leman's vision showed him this endpoint? Not the healing of the Emperor, but his transformation, an apotheosis. What if he saw that any cure or miracle to bring his father back would be the last piece that completes the Dark King's birth? An entity like that wouldn't liberate humanity, it would be its eternal, perfect master. For a man built to destroy monsters, learning that the greatest one was his own father, barely alive on the throne, that is not a revelation you survive with your purpose intact. So the quest stops being a mystery and becomes a choice. He could not reveal the truth. Tell the Imperium their beloved Emperor is becoming a chaos god, it would start a civil war, again. He could not stay still either. He was the executioner. Watching a threat grow and doing nothing was never in his nature. So he took the secret and disappeared. He positioned himself in the one place where he could monitor the Dark King's emergence, the Eye of Terror. Not searching for anything, just watching. A sentinel using his unmatched knowledge of the warp to stand guard against his own father's potential godhood. His eternal hunt isn't for a mythical tree. It's for any sign that the transformation is in its final step. Maybe he left his armor behind, in a temple of Horus in the warp, deliberately as a message to Bjorn that said, "The Wolf King is done. Something else walks now." That is a change about his promise, because in the wolf time, their king is coming home in glory for the final battle. But what if the wolf time isn't salvation? What if, and hear me out, wolf time is Ragnarok because Games Workshops loves to copy the Sorry about that. What if the final battle that Russ promised isn't against Chaos or Xenos, but against the Emperor himself? That would be his last act of loyalty, not to any institution or the myth of the Emperor, to the one who said he would never be a god. Leman Russ would return not as a savior, but as the last son with the stomach to do what must be done, fulfilling the brutal purpose he was always made for, fulfilling his title and coming home to kill a monster. There are two versions of the Wolf King. In one, he is a grieving son destroyed by loyalty, chasing an impossible cure into the worst place in existence because he had nothing left to offer except endurance. Very noble and tragic, but mostly human. In the other, he is something colder, a warden who saw clearly enough to understand that some truths cannot be spoken, only carried. A son who loves his father enough to make sure he can never hurt anyone again. The Illuminati Broadcast Network doesn't tell you what to believe. We just make sure you've seen what is actually there. But I want to know where you stand, Initiate. Is Leman Russ a broken man on an impossible quest? Or is he still out there, somewhere in the eye, waiting and counting down to the moment he has to do the worst thing imaginable? The wolf time is coming, and when it does, you will know which version was right. The report on Leman Russ is closed. Hope you like it, and thanks for watching.